The couple who moved in next door took one look at the strip of land beside my house and called it basically unused, and I remember standing there smiling politely while thinking, wow, you really just said that out loud, because 3 days later their entire detached garage permit got denied before the city even finished the first review, and even now the Part 1 replay, most isn't the paperwork or the county inspector showing up. It's the confidence they had when they assumed something I'd owned for years somehow counted as available. Their names were Reed and Vanessa Calloway, and they bought the gray colonial next to mine in Briar Point, a quiet neighborhood outside Greenville, South Carolina, where everybody keeps their lawns neat, waves from the mailbox, and somehow notices every contractor van before it even turns the corner. I'd lived there 12 years, long enough to know every dog walker by name, long enough to tell which porch light belonged to which house at night, long enough to appreciate how boring and predictable the street usually felt. Reed and Vanessa fit in fast. Reed was easygoing, tall, baseball cap most days, always holding iced coffee and saying hello like he'd known you forever. Vanessa had that polished suburban warmth where she remembered your name instantly and somehow made every sentence sound upbeat, even when she was clearly trying to get something done. First week there, she brought homemade cookies, asked about trash pickup schedules, complimented the flower beds. Totally normal. Honestly, I liked them, which is probably why the first weird thing felt so off. My side strip isn't pretty. It runs between my house and the property line, maybe 12 feet wide and almost 90 feet deep all the way to the rear fence. No landscaping, no patio furniture, no dramatiche stonework, just storage racks under covers, lawn tools, a utility trailer, stacked lumber from old projects, practical everyday stuff. But it's deeded, county recorded, clearly marked on the parcel map, and it matters because it belongs to me. Friday afternoon, my neighbor Evelyn Harper from across the street stopped me while I was spraying dirt off a rake. Evelyn is retired and somehow sees everything without ever appearing obvious about it. She lowered her sunglasses and asked, "You having Reed help with something over there?" I frowned. "No. What?" She nodded toward the strip. "Saw him out there yesterday with a measuring tape. Walked the whole length." I laughed because the sentence sounded ridiculous. But the laugh disappeared fast. Because Reed had never mentioned anything. Never asked. And there's a specific kind of unease when somebody steps onto your property without permission. Not panic exactly, just your instincts quietly tapping your shoulder. I try not to overthink it. Then Sunday evening Vanessa knocked while I was grilling chicken on the back patio. Sun dropping low. Smoke in the air. Totally normal evening. She smiled brightly. "Hey Noah, quick question." And there it was. They were planning a detached garage behind their house. Reed wanted workshop space. Storage upstairs. Nice upgrade. The cleanest access route for utilities and contractor equipment happened to run directly through my side strip. She said it lightly. Friendly. Only temporary. A couple weeks at most. Then came the sentence that changed the whole tone. "And honestly, it's not like you really use that space much anyway." Still smiling. Like it was obvious. Like the answer should naturally be yes. And what got me wasn't even the request. It was realizing Reed had already been measuring before Vanessa came over. They planned around my land first, then asked after. I smiled back. Calm. Let me think about it. She thanked me immediately, a little too confidently, like she already knew how the conversation ended. The second she walked away, I shut the grill down and went straight inside. Opened the filing cabinet in my office. Pulled out everything. Date paquet. Survey map. County plat. Utility records. Every boring document nobody thinks about until suddenly they matter a lot. Monday morning, I called a surveyor named Curtis Dean, local guy, sharp, efficient. He came Tuesday. Verified every line. Checked corner markers. Remeasured the entire strip. By late afternoon, bright orange stakes lined the property from sidewalk to fence. Impossible to ignore. Every few feet. Clean and visible. But I kept going. That evening, I filed an updated parcel use confirmation with county planning documenting the strip as active private use storage with maintained access under recorded ownership. Entirely true. Entirely legal. Quiet paperwork. Nothing flashy. which is usually where the strongest leverage hides. Wednesday afternoon, Reed and Vanessa stood in their driveway with a contractor reviewing blueprints across the hood of a pickup truck. Reed pointed directly at my side strip. Contractor nodded. Vanessa looked relaxed, totally confident. I remember tightening a loose wheel in a garden cart and thinking, somebody over there is about to have a much harder week than they realize. Thursday morning, Evelyn texted me 4 words. Inspector at Callaway's now. I stepped onto the porch with coffee and saw the white city SUV parked curbside. Inspector holding clipboard. Contractor explaining something fast. Reed pointing toward the backyard. Vanessa smiling tightly. Then the inspector traced one finger down the site plan, lifted his head, looked directly at the orange stakes lining my side strip, stopped moving, and the energy changed instantly. Reed's shoulders dropped like somebody cut a cable. Vanessa's smile vanished so fast it almost felt cinematic. The contractor folded the plans halfway shut and stared. Nobody said anything loud enough for me to hear from the porch, but honestly, they didn't need to. Even 30 feet away, I could feel the exact second they realized the basically unused strip of land beside my house had just become the one thing standing between them and a garage they had already spent months planning. Even from my porch, I could feel the shift immediately. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody made a scene. But the whole mood in that driveway changed in one clean second. The city inspector looked from the parcel map to the site plan, then over to the bright orange survey stakes lining my side strip, and the expression on his face turned flat in that very official way people get when the answer is obvious and there's no clean way around it. Reed started talking right away, fast, pointing toward the backyard, tracing imaginary routes through the air with one hand while balancing the blueprint tube under his arm with the other. Vanessa jumped in beside him with that practice smile she always wore when she thought she could smooth a situation over. But this time, even from 30 feet away, I could tell she knew something was wrong. The contractor barely moved. He just looked at the stakes, looked at the map, then quietly folded one corner of the plans down like he was already mentally preparing for revision work. The inspector wrote a note, nodded once, and walked back toward the SUV. No argument. No negotiation. Just procedure. A minute later, he drove off. Reed stayed in the driveway, staring after him. Vanessa looked at the folded plans like they'd personally betrayed her. The contractor gave a short shake of his head and climbed into his truck. And suddenly the whole street felt quieter than usual. By lunchtime, the permit portal updated. Denied, pending redesign, due to private parcel conflict and no legal access easement. That was it. One sentence. Clean county wording. But one sentence was all it took to freeze months of planning in place. I tried to go about the day like normal. Trimmed hedges. Reorganized the garage shelves. Took a call from work. But every now and then I caught myself glancing toward next door. Around 6, Vanessa knocked. Harder than before. No ismite. No neighborhood warmth. Just frustration she was trying hard to keep contained. Did you know this would happen? She asked before I even opened the storm door fully. I leaned against the frame. I knew it could. Noah, seriously. She exhaled. We've already paid deposits on this project. I understand. Engineering. Contractors. Materials. We've been planning this for months. Using a route across my land. Her eyes sharpened. You filed paperwork right before review. Because it's my property. That feels deliberate. I gave a small nod. That caught her off guard. She blinked. Probably expected defensiveness. Maybe an apology. But before either of us could keep going, Reed walked up behind her with the blueprints tucked under his arm and that exhausted look people get when stress has already been chewing on them all day. We're trying to figure this out, he said. Then you probably need another route. He rubbed his forehead. We only needed temporary access. Then you should have asked before measuring. Silence. Long enough to matter. Vanessa crossed her arms. Neighbors help each other. Sure, I said. Neighbors also usually ask before assuming. Reed looked down at the roll plans and gave this dry laugh that had zero humor in it. This is going to cost us. I know, and weirdly enough, I meant it. I wasn't trying to punish anybody. I genuinely hated that it had escalated. But there's a difference between being kind and letting somebody quietly treat your boundaries like suggestions. Vanessa studied my face like she was trying to figure out if I was bluffing or waiting for them to make a better offer. Then she realized there wasn't another angle. She turned and walked back down the driveway. Reed stayed a second longer. You really weren't ever going to say yes? No, he nodded once. Slow, tired, then followed her. And that was when the neighborhood really started noticing. Briar Point is one of those places where nobody openly gossips, but somehow everybody always knows. Evelyn watered the same flower bed for nearly half an hour. Hank walked his dog past the driveway. So many times the dog started resisting. A contractor van would pull up and curtains would shift 2 houses down. Nobody asked me anything directly, but people definitely watched. Friday morning, a civil engineer arrived, then a drainage specialist, then another survey crew. Their original layout depended completely on my side strip as the easiest trench route and contractor access point. Without that, every alternative got ugly fast. The far side of their property dropped more sharply than expected. Runoff pooled near the fence after heavy rain. Mature oak roots cut through the best trench line. Existing irrigation crossed under the backup route. Spray-painted markings appeared in the grass, then disappeared. Stakes moved, then moved again. A trenching company came by Monday, then an engineer Tuesday, then a retaining wall estimate Wednesday. Every new answer created another problem. Every problem came with another invoice. Late Wednesday, I checked the mailbox and saw Reed sitting in his truck with the engine off staring at paperwork on the steering wheel. He got out when he saw me. He looked worn down. We're over 13 grand now. I whistled under my breath. That adds up fast. He laughed without smiling. Drainage review. Engineering revision. Utility reroute. Retaining wall. He shook his head. All because of 12 feet. I leaned against the mailbox post and looked toward the side strip. No, all because 12 feet got treated like they didn't belong to anybody. That hit him. I could see it. He looked at the ground for a second, then quietly said, Vanessa thought you wouldn't care. That's why asking matters. He nodded, then after a pause added, I shouldn't have measured without talking to you first. That surprised me more than I expected. I shrugged. Would have changed the conversation. Probably would have changed a lot more than that. Then he gave a tired half smile and headed inside. By Thursday evening, they finally had a redesign. Smaller garage footprint. Utilities rerouted along the far edge. Added retaining wall. Drainage adjustment. More labor. Less convenient access. The city approved the revision Friday morning. Construction started before sunrise Saturday. Concrete saws. Backing alarms. Nail guns. Dust drifting through the trees. The whole neighborhood woke up with it. And every morning I stood on the porch with coffee watching a version of their garage rise that clearly wasn't the one they originally planned. It still looked nice, but tighter, more forced, angled differently, less clean spacing around the side yard. Practical, but compromised. Vanessa looked drained all week. Reed spent evenings reviewing invoices in the truck before going inside. Then one evening around sunset, while the framing crew packed up and sawdust hung in the orange light, Vanessa crossed halfway toward the fence. She looked tired, real tired, but calm. You knew this would derail everything, she said quietly. I shut off the hose I was using on the tomatoes. I knew where my property line was. She folded her arms. Honestly, we really thought that strip wasn't a big deal. I looked over at it. Storage bins. Trailer, fence line, the same ordinary patch I'd walked 1,000 times. That's exactly what worried me. Why, she asked. I answered without thinking. Because when people decide something doesn't matter, they stop treating it like it belongs to somebody. She looked at the orange survey stakes catching the sunset, then back at me. I didn't think of it that way. I figured. That actually made her smile a little. Tired. Honest. This whole thing got way bigger than I expected. Boundary issues usually do. She laughed softly at that, then nodded once. No argument left. No new negotiation. Just understanding finally catching up to where the paperwork had been all week. She turned and walked back toward the framing crew while the last light hit the side of the unfinished garage, and standing there with the hose still dripping onto the grass, I had the feeling the hardest part was finally behind us. Standing there that evening watching Vanessa walk back toward the unfinished garage, I could feel something finally loosen. Not disappear, not magically reset, but loosen. Like the whole neighborhood had been holding one long breath for 2 straight weeks and finally exhaled. Construction kept moving after that. Framing became roofing. Roofing became siding. Contractors came and went with coffee cups and tool belts and pickup trucks before sunrise, and little by little the Callaway's garage became a real finished structure sitting farther to the right than they originally wanted. Tucked tighter against the retaining wall and angled around drainage that never would have mattered if they'd had access through my property. From a street, it looked good. Honestly, really good. If somebody drove through Briar Point for the first time, they would have thought it had always belonged exactly there. But the people on our block knew better. Evelyn definitely knew better. She caught me one afternoon while I was dragging a storage tote down the side strip and smiled over the top of her sunglasses. "That little patch of yours got expensive real quick." I laughed. Turns out it appreciated overnight. She pointed a pruning shear at me and said, "Best return on investment I've seen this year." Then she walked off grinning. And for the first time in a while, I laughed without tension behind it. But later that afternoon, while I was putting tools away, I had one of those quiet thoughts that sneaks up on you. Because the truth is, I almost said yes. That part stayed with me. If Reed hadn't been caught measuring before Vanessa came over, if the whole thing had started with an honest conversation instead of an assumption, maybe I would have agreed. Maybe I would have said, sure, no problem, use the strip for a couple weeks. And maybe it would have stayed temporary. Or maybe 6 months later there'd be another request. Maintenance access. Utility repairs. Then one day somebody casually refers to it like a shared route everybody uses. Boundaries rarely get crossed all at once. Usually it happens one polite little step at a time. That thought sat with me longer than I expected. The garage wrapped up the following week. Final inspection passed. Contractors cleared out. Quiet came back. Reed started waving again from the driveway. Smaller wave than before. More genuine somehow. Less polished. Vanessa mostly kept to herself for a while. Then one evening right around sunset, I was stacking cedar boards near the fence and heard footsteps behind me. She stopped a few feet away with both hands in her jacket pockets and looked toward the finished garage glowing orange in the evening light. "It turned out okay," she said. I nodded. "Looks solid." She smiled faintly. "Definitely not the original plan." "Nope." I got a quiet laugh out of her. Then she looked down at the grass and took a second before speaking again. "Can I be honest?" "Sure." "Well, I knocked on your door that first night. I was completely sure you'd say yes. I figured. And when you didn't," she paused and gave a small, embarrassed smile, "I was annoyed enough to think you were just being difficult." I leaned one shoulder against the fence post. "Fair." But after all this, she glanced toward the garage, then toward the side strip beside my house. "I think, Reed, and I got so locked into our own project that we stopped seeing it as your property and started seeing it as part of the plan. No performance. No perfect apology. Just honest words said quietly while the sun dropped behind the trees." I shrugged. "That happens faster than people think." She nodded. "Yeah." Then she smiled. "For what it's worth. I get it now. That's worth something." We stood there another second without saying much. Then she headed back across the lawn. No dramatic reconciliation. No big movie ending. Just two neighbors understanding each other a little better than they had a month earlier. A few days later, I pulled the orange survey stakes out of the ground. Didn't need them anymore. The line was clear. Life went back to ordinary things. Mowing grass. Grocery runs. Weekend errands. Rain in the gutters. But every time I wheel something down that narrow strip beside the house, I still think about how ordinary it looks from the road, and how fast ordinary turns important the second somebody decides it fits inside their plans. Sometimes the quietest part of your property ends up teaching the loudest lesson. So I'm curious, if your neighbors had looked at your land, decided it wasn't a big deal, and built an entire plan around using it before ever really asking, would you have kept the peace and let them through, or drawn the line knowing it could cost them thousands and permanently shift the relationship? Drop your take in the comments, because I honestly think people split right down the middle on this one, and I really want to hear where you land. And if you like stories about neighborhood disputes, quiet legal wins, and those moments where ordinary people finally decide enough is enough, subscribe, stick around, and I'll see you in the next one.